Well, thank you so much for inviting me into your house and let me get to be here.
Well, you're welcome. I'm glad to have you. Yeah.
You mentioned, David, this was Carlene Albright's.
Yes, this is like a community, a home of people that wanted to serve the community for years. Because Carlene Albright was basically a rock solid person with the Woodway City Council for years and years, and she's really probably you might say a founder of Woodway in so many ways. And I've talked to so many ladies that said they'd been over here with church meetings and so many other things.
Really?
So it was like the perfect person to buy her house and keep that tradition going on. And of course, she donated this house to the city to help financially wherever it could be. And it's just a wonderful thing that she's done. I'm glad her name is on the Arboretum.
Yeah.
When I bought this house and I made my offer, I also sent the city council a letter telling a little bit about myself. And I said, since this is such a historic site in terms of Carly Bright, that if they wanted to put a sign on here showing it as a historic site, I'd be glad to do that.
Wow.
I wouldn't mind seeing that, because one thing the city of Woodway is 70 years old, and we don't really mark our history very well. Whitehall, a little bit. There's a historic sign at the park that there was the church, and that church is replica at the Carlene Bright Center, the Arboretum.
That was a church.
That's the replica of what was at where Whitehall Park is and where Whitehall Cemetery is. This area is kind of made up of three small communities: Whitehall and the Rainbow Lake area, and then the area on the other side of that where the old cemetery that's being cleaned up now.
That's Liberty. It's the Liberty.
Liberty Hill Cemetery. You might could say four. There's also an area that was called Tater Hill that was there that basically Woodway encompasses all that area.
Okay.
So it's just neat, the history that's forgotten, but also the important thing is Woodway's coming up on 70 years old. We need to start marking, the founding families. We've talked about that I'd like to find families that's been here for 50 years, 60 years. And I know one lady that I met that moved here in 57. I'd like in our newsletter to have some information about these founding families that built this wonderful city to where we are now. So
I love it.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I love documenting history. That's what kind of got me interested in doing this.
Well, my CPA grew up in Woodway, and she showed me a book that's out of print that I want to find how we can put in print of the history of Woodway. And she said that the City Hall used to sell it, and hers was pretty tattered and torn, but I'm going, we need this again. I don't know what it would cost. I don't want things to be real expensive, but we've got a council member that's a publisher. So
who's that?
David Keaston is not only an author, but he's also a publisher, and that's where he's made his living for the last 35 years.
Really?
Yes. So I'm not sure what the name of his publishing company is. Yeah. One of my best friends. I should ask him that. But I'm just always bragging that I know an author, someone that's published 4 books or maybe more books. And
Yeah.
Wow. When did Carlene?
I don't know all the timing, but
she sold this house, or she donated this house when she went in a nursing home, and so I don't get the date that she actually passed on it. But that happened in let's see, that was probably about 2011.
Okay.
I think it might be earlier than that. Dates are hard, on thinking.
Yeah, and I figured out how long they said that it was in the city's name.
Yeah.
And so
one of the ladies that's kind of the founding member, I think she is, of the McLennan County Republican Party, knew Carlene Bright very well. And she's a wonderful, lovely lady. And I see her, matter of fact, I'll probably see her this Thursday. And she always gives me a hug and brings up about Carlene. I need to get more information from her, and maybe we need to interview
That
her.
would be great. I would love to
because
hear
she is just a lovely, lovely woman.
Wow.
Super.
Wow. Well, you talked about transparency. You talked about transparency with the last interviewer that just came. I'm following her. I'd love to hear more about just kind of the vision for Woodway, transparency, what's inciting that, and then also like what could it look like?
Well, as I say, as a more recent resident of the city, I found when I started attending these council meetings that that looked as if decisions are being made that were fairly substantial dollars, and there was not really much input from the city, from the residents. So part of it's the fact that there was very little notice out to where folks, they put an agenda up there on the window of the city hall, but who takes the time to go over there and sit in front of the window and read the agenda ahead of time?
Right.
Every once in a while, somebody who happened to be in conversation with somebody else learns about it, and they wind up being a word of mouth way that things get out appeared. But it wasn't a matter of seeing that the city management, our manager as well, or the council was very much interested in what the citizens of Woodway had to say. And then when we do have those folks who come in at the beginning of their council meetings, they have an opportunity as a resident to give us 3 minutes to sit up there and tell the council what we think. But I got the impression, even after being one of those people that got up there and talked, that they don't really listen. It looks like, we've already made our decision. You can say what you want, and I appreciate you getting a chance to say hello and tell you what you think, but it doesn't have any input on what makes the decision's going to be. And so that was the first thing that hit me, and and I started talking to David Russell and David Keaston, and we just said, that's kind of the routine. Is we have a controlling interest in that area on that council that has said, well, we have hired a professional city manager, and we're going to go with whatever he has to tell us. And that's the impression I've gotten. Now, if that's correct or not, I can't tell you that. But it's what they left for me. And it was one of the reasons why I thought, it'd be awfully nice if, as a citizen, if I had all that information on the front end of what's going to go on, and that they would have some way of me putting an input into what they're doing before it's made. And so that's our motivation. And so, we think that every way we can think of to make sure whatever's coming up on the agenda is public knowledge. We're not going to make decisions in private that actually affect all of us. So that's transparency.
Got it.
And that's the key thing that we see that we want to run on.
We have
if we have control of if the control is that area, you will know what's going on in this city comfortably. Whether you want to ignore it or not, it's the old thing, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So we'll put it out there. And if you guys just want to ignore it and say, you go do your thing, that's fine. But those who are at least got enough sense to realize it's their money we're talking about and want to look at it, we'll give them that opportunity that they're not getting now.
One of the things we're planning to do more posting on social media about exactly what the 9 or 10 points of the transparency platform would be. But one of the things that I think we can show contrast is what it was like in 2020 when I got on the council to what we're talking about now. Now, during that time was right before COVID was really hitting big. So it was a very difficult time. But I asked about the posting of the minutes, no, not just minutes, the minutes, but also the agenda. And the city manager said, legally, all we have to do is post it on the window outside City Hall. Well, it wasn't just at that time, wasn't just on the window at City Hall, but it was on the window facing the fire station. So you really had to want to go around to that side and look at it. I argued very loudly, and I know it did make it to our website, but at the same time, on our website, it's pretty well hidden, and you have to know where to find it on there. Now, we've been talking about we want it posted on. We do a lot of posting on Facebook through many different web pages for the city, and we're saying we'd like it posted on Facebook, all the different agendas that's on there, so citizens would know, and on Nextdoor, because Nextdoor seems to be a growing social media. Now, when I said that before, I was told we don't want that because people would overflow the city hall. And I'm going, but they need to know, and of course it got turned down. I've had one of the mayors tell me, can you call those people that are coming to the meetings and tell them don't come and talk during those 3 minutes because they're slowing down our meeting. Now, to me, that's just 180 degrees out of what anybody should say. But the idea is like Richard's saying, we don't want to know what you're thinking. We want to tell you what we're thinking, and that's it. And the 7 people rule the Woodway. I've actually heard, and some of these council members that are here right now, we don't represent the citizens, we represent the city. That's 180 degrees out. I've heard when someone emails you, or calls you, we should not respond. Just let the city respond. That's 180 degrees out. These are important issues. We need to be representatives of the citizens. If the citizens have trouble with the city staff that works for the citizens, we're their liaison to say, okay, let's work this out and see if everything's right. So far as more transparency, we talked about getting the information about the meetings out, but also when Dave Keaston and when I got reelected and he got elected, we was able to push to go to an audio recording on our website. That's a big change from recording of the minutes, because the minutes is just an overview, and you might just see.
So it's looking at the past. It's not looking at what we're actually
Correct.
Dealing with in the present.
Correct. But our next step is doing exactly what you have here. We want it taped live or video live where anybody can watch it, but also put on the website where if you're working during the time of the council meeting, you can say, I want to go back and look at maybe item 4 or item 6 or whatever is important, and you could run that video up to it and see what the debate was. And the next thing is we want voicemail set up for all the council members. So if you're going, whatever the item is, I want to call this council member and first put information in his head before the vote. That's most important. But second, tell him why I wasn't happy and why I think it would be better in the future not to do whatever it is. So we want better communications between the council members and the citizen.
So there's council members, there's citizens, and then there's city manager, and there's people under city manager.
Correct. City manager is the
he's
chief.
the one who has all of the city employees who are reporting up to him. And there are department heads, and that they're the ones that do it, and then they take care of it. It's just like any other business.
He's the CEO
charge.
of Woodway.
Our structure is, and this is in our website and in our city charter that citizens are number one, council is number two, city manager is executive, but also you have the city attorney that can overrule things, and then all the other staff. Now, it's improper for me to go to a staff member and say, I want you to do this
As a
councilman. But, and I try to meet as many of them, and the main thing I tell them is I appreciate what you do. We're watching, and you're doing a great job. If they're doing something wrong, our job should be go to the city manager and say, maybe you need to counsel this employee on this. And I had to do that just last week on an issue about taking up our signs, and it was just poorly done. And they took up on one street every one of our signs and didn't take up anybody else's because they said it was a code violation. Well, we worked it out, and basically it was the wrong employee. We're going to work on the code violations or what they think was for the next election, but this is not going to happen here. But there's some codes for campaigns that every single campaign, whether it's presidential or sheriff or state house, violates because there's a footage and right-of-way issue that we're going to work out next year, and hopefully have a little class for the new people, and the one anybody that's running for office to say, okay, here's what you can and can't do, and we need phone numbers from you. So if we see something's wrong, we can contact you and say, the sign at this place needs to be moved 2 foot away from the street or whatever the code violation is. But that's a prime example of how that's supposed to work.
Huh.
Yeah.
What's the role of city manager supposed to look like? In an ideal world, what does the city manager, how should that interaction between city manager and council people function?
In reality, the city council is to manage the city council manager.
Managers.
So he comes up with ideas and gives them to us, and then we give him direction on how it should be done. Now, our last city manager was talking about was a brilliant man, knew a lot of things, and of course, he was helping to make sure we did not violate anything. But sometimes that might have went too far. The city attorney is the same way, and it's always a difficult place from the standpoint of who's managing who, but overall the council manages the city manager, and that's something that some of the city councilmen that we have now, maybe even a majority, gets managed more than manages the city manager. So that's something that we're wanting to see, good quality people that understands business and understands that role.
Understands business for the sake from the council, so they can ask good business questions to
Correct.
the city manager to see where money's being spent.
Exactly, 100%. We have some very smart people on the council. I don't want to say they're not smart, but we're heavier loaded with nonprofit style people that hasn't been responsible for dollars. Where if we get these two people in, they will understand how to look at a budget. I mean, I've had several of the council members say they don't understand anything on the budget. Well, I've had to live and die for them for my budget and my numbers for all my working years. And of course, Richard.
I had to look at every business that I dealt with to look at their budgets and all, and make sure that as they're asking for loans, we understand and get them to understand the cash flow, understand their ability to repay the loan. And so that you've got to understand the numbers before you start making decisions, because if you, especially with young businesses, the 80-20% rules, 80% are going to fail, and the other 20% they will say after 2 years they survive, and hopefully they'll have a long history.
Right.
But getting through the first 2 years is always
hard.
That's the hard part.
I know,
Yeah.
you know.
And would you mind sharing just a little bit about your background?
Oh, well, I was born in Pennsylvania. My dad was transferred to Louisville, Kentucky, and we went with General Electric. In fact, he was at General Electric in Erie, Pennsylvania, and moved. They transferred us into Louisville, Kentucky, with a new plant that was building appliances. I finished my school years, high school, went to Bader, graduated from Bader, went back to Louisville, got into banking as a management trainee, and was Citizens Fidelity Bank there in Louisville. And I spent 14 years there, and then took a position with Pan National Group out in El Paso. While I was out there, the First National Bank in Dallas had a holding company, and they had a de novo they were starting up, and they were looking for a president. And they hired me as president, and I was president there as we were going through a process of building a new building and developing that on Interstate 10 in El Paso. My wife had been with the other bank that was in there that's part of the holding company, and they transferred both of us back up to Dallas in 1978. She was in the holding company and worked on the top floor of the First National Bank when we came up here in 1978. And I was in I was a lending officer in the Metro Division there for First National Bank. From there, I transferred into and took positions with community banks, and I went through 4 banks there, and ended my career in 2005. So retired from banking in 2005. My wife was quite a bit younger than me, and so I decided I just didn't want to be retired, and so I went out and got the education. I did 1,500 hours of education and worked under on a mentor program with a friend who was a full-fledged real estate appraiser, and I got my license as certification in 2009, and then I continued in that until 2019. So I put about 10 more years in that business after I actually was certified. It's actually about 13 years because I had 3 years of education. I had to go back to school and do it, and actually was appraising during that 3 years. But everything I had to do had to be signed off by the certified appraiser.
Okay, so you're qualified to make financial decisions.
Yes.
I think that with most all of my career and my training, I've got a degree from Stony Graduate School of Banking there that I got back in 1964, I think. I have to look at it. It's been a while. Anyway, so yeah, I think that from the standpoint of the background and all the businesses I have dealt with over the years, that I'm pretty well qualified to look at financial information, understand it.
Okay, come on.
All right?
He will have the most credentials from the standpoint of finances.
Sure.
My investments and my retired from grocery executive. We did a lot, but nothing like this because he's bank executive, bank president, commercial lender, and then real estate appraisal. That's pretty big. And of course, Andrea, with her experience in commercial real estate insurance adjusting, that's just another solid thing.
Yeah.
And of course, David was a real estate. I'm trying to remember exactly what he did, but he basically flipped large commercial buildings when he was younger, did leasing and that type of stuff. Yeah. And I think Atlanta and a few other places. So, he had that type of experience and then running this publishing company on his own. So we'll have 4 people. I might be the weakest link on that of the 4 people that are solid financial minded people, but not just that, wonderful Christian people. Of course, you've heard his testimony about that, and believe serving the Lord and serving our citizens. So it's a pretty solid stuff versus wanting to, some people want to be council people, just to be council people. Councilman might look good on a resume or might look good for their next step. I don't have another step, and neither does Richard. Richard says he's going to do one term only. I'm debating. I could do one more term after this one. I got 2 more years. I'm debating if we get people like Richard and Andrea and of course David, and there's several others that's wanting to look at it in the future. I might be saying, hey, we've got it set up in a good situation that I don't need to do that. Might not need to do any more politics. That I wanted to be on the council to help out the citizens, but I didn't really want to get into where everybody is. The last meeting, I joked with some people saying I was looking for a crucifix to come in because they were so angry about that situation. And I've seen others the same way. And they was kind of set up situations to make it become more of a Jerry Springer style event. We need decorum in city councils. We don't need all this cheering and hollering and calling people's name out to try to make them change their vote. A loud minority, I call them. And we see this in other places, the Israel conflict that's going on. You see people screaming different things that I don't agree with. And I think the majority of Americans don't agree with. I'm Christian, I support Israel. And, we see on the news all the time them marching and hollering and getting a lot of attention. It seems like the minority feels like the louder they holler, the more attention they get. And I guess that's the case.
How could you meant? I was not at that city meeting, and I haven't been. I think I've been to only the ones that I've been required to for my business.
Yes.
But how can you mentioned that this was a longer process, or that particular issue was a longer process? But how could any issue get more into conversation or more than just like, hey, it needs to be done right now? It seems like I wasn't there, so it seems like that was kind of what happened.
That's exactly it. And we've gotten a lot of misinformation. One of the past council members was saying she got the Tex Dot grant, did a lot of the work and stuff. Well, we're finding out, I replaced her, found out that, it would be 4+ years, and we didn't apply for it back then, and I don't know why, but we did have a vote a little over a year ago to see if the city manager could apply for it. And that was basically all that vote was. The numbers was different than what they ended up being, and we had no more conversation about it. I would like to have more conversation about it in meetings or private, and I think we need to have more public goals told to the city of, we're working on this, it looks like this might cost this, so people can talk about it. I want town hall meetings, at least one a year, for citizens to say, what do they want? We did hire a company out of Metroplex somewhere, paid them over $200,000, and they did have some town hall meetings, and now they've printed a 104-page report. The bad part is some of the things that we know people talked about a lot, and they even showed us about the large amount of seniors in Woodway, and that was about time we started pushing for the senior center idea. Then the report, they totally left it out. So we're in a debate right now about should we accept the report or not. One of my mentors, which is another banker, Rodney Kroll's his name. He just opened up a new bank in town. He had been on the council 17 years before when we didn't have term limits. And he was saying, and right now he's the chairman of the planning and zoning board that gives the council recommendations on should we approve or not. And he said that he has seen where past city managers has used these type of items as almost a club saying, you approved this, we must follow this. And the same way with some zoning. And he's not for that. And there was several on the council that was saying, on the planning and zoning was saying that. Our city manager right now is saying we could approve it, use it when we need it for grants, but everything else be put on the shelf. So I'm not sure what's the right answer here. We're going to have some smaller non-quorum meetings with planning and zoning with some of the people from that company at a cost of $16,000 on top of that $200,000. But to try to see if we can accept it, but not accept all of it. But the big thing is I want the citizens to be more in the goals. Let's set some 3-year goals, 4-year goals, or whatever. Like, for instance, maybe building a standalone senior center that is not part of a community center. But step one, we need to save that building and have a senior center in there now. The council right now has said that we can use the new Family Fun Center, the one room, as a senior center. And some of the younger people that don't understand some of the issues with aging is saying this is perfect. Story Cook, she wants to tear down the old building. The issue we told them then, and we found out once it was open, is there's only 8 handicap places. And if you don't get one of those handicap places, you have to walk 100 steps uphill from the closest parking. Well, there's people with mobility issues, and it's not easy. Plus, once you walk in there, you have a pretty good walk to get back to the room. And we had a good turnout that first week because everybody wanted to be there. But I'm betting we're having 0 turnout now because people are saying it's too hard. And
For the seniors, yeah.
For the seniors,
to get up, you mean to get up to the
younger people who are healthy, and I say younger, they could be in their 50s and 60s, who love to play pickleball. That's a great place for them. And they're doing that from about 8 until 3?
That correct.
And they're using the center for 8 to 3 for pickleball, so they got 3 courts set up there. So you at least got about 6 people, or if they did doubles, I guess you could double that. Mm-hmm. They put 4.
I think pickleball is mainly played in doubles.
Huh?
I think I don't know enough about pickleball. David Keyston plays pickleball.
Yeah,
and he's good.
And I think they did. I know he was playing. Mm-hmm. He had a partner, so that there were four folks on each court, so they could be having 12 people up there playing pickleball, and they probably play for about an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just so about that regular. So that's fine. I mean, that's a good use for it. And then that's related to seniors. Now, when they cut it off on that about 3 o'clock, then they take those tickle dolls down, and they got 2 basketball courts. And so they could use that. And they can also then, if they're not using a part of the basketball courts, they can have other aerobic things going on, or whatever type of function they do. So, it's good that the city has it now. And I think as we advertise it and folks get to know it and word of mouth gets out, it's going to get pretty good use. In fact, that's when we think having the other one there is going to make a lot of sense, because then we can have 3 more.
And 2 more basketball courts.
Yeah, or 2 more basketball courts. So, if we get into some kind of league thing for the kids, wouldn't it be great to have 4 basketball courts that we can have games going on at the same time?
I can tell you from the old Woodway Family Center. And of course, before COVID seems like forever ago.
Right.
But when I first started on the council, when those games was going on, it was hard to find parking places for council because so many people was parking all over. And one of our critical things was we did not have enough parking. So the reasoning that we needed to build another one or what was left out could have been added on to the old one was we was busting at the seams. We heard that over and over. And it was we didn't want our children to be having basketball games scheduled past their bedtime, that we had so much going on. We had that, football, baseball, and all the other things, extremely successful. And that's wonderful. But the new Family Fun Center was actually supposed to be 22,800 square feet.
Gross, yeah.
For some reason, it got cut down to 15,000. The old one was 12. We did not get any more capacity out of the new one. It's
Very
nice.
little,
No, it was zero.
1,000 square feet. Wasn't
But the capacity of the basketball games is exactly the same. You have a little bit more room for space for parents around, but even more, we only have one room for other activities. Now, these other activities can be rented for birthday parties or who knows how many different things. The old one, we had two. So if we keep the old one, not only will we have space for carryover, but we can have senior center there. We can have extra space for pickleball, and we have more space for renting out things. And the inside was basically redone. It was done during COVID. We was needing to work our staff. There was a lot of things we couldn't do. So the city manager then, we talked bad about some of the things. He did a wonderful thing on this. He put them to work inside, and we did it all just for the cost of materials, which I'm very happy about that. They also did the same things on the Arboretum. There's some things I'm not happy about the Arboretum that we need to repair, but we did it all with our own staff except for the splash pad, and it was a great reduction of what it would cost. And while we're talking about the Arboretum, we did during the sewer line project, there was a Mashner Gardeners Club that took care of all the beautiful plants all around. And I wasn't involved in this, but what I'm basically told from the Master Gardeners was they was not treated properly during the sewer line project and basically has not been invited back. I think there's another group also that I've met in different surroundings that feels very alienated. They are saying if we can win back the council to a more common sense, thing, they would like to be brought back. I can tell you, I'd like to have that meeting with them because, here's volunteerism is so wonderful. Here's two groups that's volunteering to make our city beautiful. And there again, make the Arboretum a little more Arboretum-like. And all we have to do is say, I'm sorry for what happened. We've got a different council now, different interim city manager. We'd like you to come back. And they said, if you ask me, we'll come. But we don't want the other council that they felt like they was not treated proper with. And I don't know what the conversation was, but they was not happy. I love volunteerism. We've talked about this. It's a way to save finances for the city. At one time, we had a Woodway beautification committee that was totally volunteers. Some of the people on the council didn't like having so many people putting their input on what's going on. So they basically did away with that. Didn't promote it. People didn't sign up for it. So it just went away. But this is things like helping out, putting out the flags. We used to put flags out with a boys club all up and down Bosque and all up and down the States. And it made you feel so proud of having a city that looked like this. They also would work on the Christmas decorations, and they would do the yard of the month for each one of the wards. So every month, somebody had this nice sign. We'd take a picture of them, put it in the newsletter, and you had people competing for that. The lady that lived across the street from me got it once while she was alive. She was so proud of it. And then once right after she passed away, because her yard looked so wonderful, and it was something to honor all of her hard work. But it helps beautify the city. I'd like to add on that part, usually you have men like ourselves that wants to help out somewhere. We could add in not just the yard of the month, but ones that might need help that maybe you don't publicize, but for maybe 3 or 4 months, you pick a yard, talk to the people and say, look, a group of us will come by and help you at no cost to you clean up your yard.
Right.
And hopefully they will get pride into it to keep it that way. And just, another thing to make Woodway better.
Yeah, there's just so many different things that
Doesn't cost a thing.
That can be done. And I know that there are many people like me that when if they're given a focus and a vision, will jump right in to do it. And so, if we have those things come up and we put it out there to the residents, we'll find those folks and say, hey, I think that's something I can do. I have some of that experience. The guys that go out there and clean up a cemetery out there, they're not young, but they have time, and they know how to pull weeds and cut up branches and stuff. And so, all of this stuff, a part of living a full life for anybody is the fact that what can you give back? If you're, it's one thing to be able to say, I want to put $20 on this deal or 20 on that. You use your money. But when you can use your experience, you can use yourself and your time to help out. And it's just like I'm doing this Reading Buddies program with the PTA there. It's not a hard deal. I mean, got a little boy comes over there and we sit down and we let him read to me, and I just help him with the words and all. We spend about 45 minutes together, and it's just it just makes me feel good. And I'm hoping that as he is doing this, that his reading skills will be improved.
I'm sure they will.
So,
I'm not getting anything out of it other than I am getting something out of it. That's the big thing, is the fact that I know there's nothing more joyful in life than being able to be used.
Yes.
It's the people who have the attitude, it's me and I have to take care of me, and they turn inside. Everything is always inside instead of turning out and looking at what's around there and looking at through the eyes of a God and everybody else and where their needs are. And as you look out that way, you are really receiving the abundant life.
Yes.
Amen.
We talked about the cemetery a little bit. There's a man by the name of Richard Maker that really he's a wonderful guy, and he had a heart to clean up the cemetery. We have 2 cemeteries in Woodway. One gets cleaned up by a group, I'm not sure who, but it looks wonderful right there by the park. But there's one that is behind a bunch of houses,
And it barely has enough room there.
It has like a driveway going back there.
It's all grass. This looks like part of the house next door's a lawn. You got to walk across their lawn, basically. It looks like.
You're crossing, trespassing, but you're not. It's this little driveway that nobody's ever driven back there in probably 50 years. It's all that's left. And when you see back there, you just saw woods. Well, Richard Maker had been saying, why? That's against code violations. Why in the city gone after the people that have it. And we found out that we don't know who, well, we know a few people that might own it, but it's one of those things where everyone has passed away that's had any connections to it. The last person that was buried back there was in the 50s. Oh. There's people buried from the 1910s, and there's 190 plus, we don't know exactly how many, but we know it's documented of 190 people are buried back there. Some of them with headstones, some of them not. But when you first went back there, there was nothing but solid woods, and there was no way to see.
Overgrowth.
Yeah, and there was the sticker vines and all this other stuff. Well, at first, we didn't know what we was really getting into, and I said, let's pull up a couple of Saturdays a year for a couple of years. Oh, we'll have that knocked out in no time. Well, the first one we worked for about 4 hours. I hauled, I don't know how many pickup loads of debris to the dump. Thank goodness it's close. And we had a 12-yard dump. And I think we figured out that we got probably 50 yards of debris cuttings out of there. We've had multiple cleanup days. I think we're going to have another one this April 20th. If it doesn't rain, it looks like it's going to rain. And, we've been trying to do about once a month when the weather works out. During the winter, it was hard. And we made a big impact.
Huh.
But it's amazing how much work it's taking to do that. And we've found boys clubs and VFW that will say once we get it cleaned up, they'll take care of it. And we've got different ideas about how we want to do this to make it a fine part of our city instead of an eyesore. Because before, it was just sad to think that 190 people were buried in a place that no one cleans up. And some of the neighbors were telling me that they knew of people that would try to go back there and find their loved ones, but it was just so impossible.
Huh.
We want to make this a very clean, nice, I think they put up signs posting some hours now, and something that is appreciated by citizens. Now, there's one neighbor particularly that is fighting us 100% because they just don't want anything done back there. And they say we're invading their privacy by doing it. But their house was built after that cemetery. When they bought it, they knew a cemetery was there. We might at some time look at some type of fundraising, nothing from the city, to privacy fence that area off for them so it won't affect them or anybody else that has it. But we would like it to be a point in Woodway where people would go and say, let me read about some of the history in Woodway and the history of people. I think there's 3 or 4 World War I veterans there.
Huh.
And I respect them. And, sometime I won't be walking around on this earth. And, I wouldn't want wherever I am placed to be disrespected. I know where I will be, my soul will be, because I'm comfortable in that. But, what's left of me would be, I'd like to be better taken care of than that.
Come on.
Yeah.
Wow. What a treat. Thank y'all so much. Thank you for opening up your home.
You're welcome.